Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the shimmering gown enveloped him, Fernando was acutely aware of the countless glittering amethyst eyes winking in the dressing room's mirror, echoing their mocking laughter. It was a dare, of course, one that had started as a playful jape within the theater troupe's raucous Halloween parties. But now? Behind him, Monica's reflection fussed over his transformed form. "Perfect. Just hold still now," she ordered, around a mouthful of hair clips, hands flipping and twisting his newly brunette tresses into a dramatic updo. Fernando trembled, not helped by the spiky points of his borrowed silver shoes. I can't believe this. Don't be such a chicken," Monica chastised, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Besides, it's a perfect fit. No one would ever guess it wasn't made for you." Padding in strategic places, a cinched waist, and Monica's expert makeup skills had transformed the normally nondescript stagehand into someone else entirely. "Now walk," Rachel commanded, the theater's costume designer crossing her arms with a critical eye. "From the wall to the door and back, hips forward, shoulders back." Fernando took a tentative step, then another. The stage had never felt so intimidating, even with no audience present except his friends. "Smaller steps," Rachel corrected. "You're not stomping across the stage to move props. You're gliding." Something clicked with those instructions. Fernando adjusted, feeling the shift in balance, the way the dress moved with each step. A strange warmth spread through his chest. Not embarrassment, but something else. Something that felt oddly like relief. "There you go!" Monica clapped. "You're a natural!" The words echoed long after the Halloween party had ended. A natural. Fernando couldn't sleep that night, the sensation of satin against his skin still lingering like a phantom touch. The makeup had washed away, the wig returned to its stand in costuming, but something remained. A feeling he couldn't shake. A glimpse of a person he'd never allowed himself to see. The next morning, Fernando found himself at the drugstore, standing awkwardly in the cosmetics aisle. A small basket held concealer, mascara, and a shimmery eyeshadow palette, all chosen with trembling hands. The cashier barely glanced up, assuming they were gifts, perhaps. Fernando didn't correct her. In his apartment bathroom, YouTube tutorials played from his phone propped against the mirror. The first attempts were disastrous. Uneven eyeliner, clumpy mascara, foundation too dark for his skin tone. But each evening after rehearsal, he tried again and again. Learning the contours of his face, discovering how shadows and highlights could transform features. A text from Rachel arrived 3 weeks later. "Props need moving tomorrow. Also found great cardigan that would suit you. Not purple, though. Interested?" Fernando's thumb hovered over the phone. A simple question with complicated implications. He typed, "What color?" "Soft pink. Vintage. Button front. Found it at thrift store. Thought of you." The rush of excitement was immediate and overwhelming. "Yes," he typed back, then added, "Thanks." The cardigan was just the beginning. Rachel had an eye for style and a gift for finding treasures in secondhand shops. A floral sundress with pockets, a blue blouse with delicate pearl buttons, a pleated skirt that swished satisfyingly with each step. Each item carefully selected, each one bringing Fernando closer to the reflection he now sought each morning. "You know," Rachel said one afternoon as they sorted through a rack of clothes in her apartment, "you could grow your hair out. The brown wig looks great, But your natural color would work too. Fernando touched his short-cropped hair self-consciously. How long would it take? To get to shoulder length? A year, maybe? Depends how fast your hair grows. Rachel pulled out a cream-colored sweater. This would look amazing with your skin tone. That night, Fernando canceled his monthly haircut appointment. A small step, but significant. Weeks turned to months. The theater season changed from fall productions to winter classics. Fernando's hair grew past his ears, requiring creative styling to maintain a professional appearance for his day job at the university administration office. The makeup became more skilled, more subtle. Evening practice sessions evolved into morning routines. Chest hair disappeared under a razor, legs too. Small changes, accumulating day by day. Have you thought about a name? Monica asked one night after rehearsal. They sat in the empty theater, the ghost light casting long shadows across the stage. Fernando looked up, startled. A name. You don't have to decide right away, Monica shrugged. But it might help. You know, when you're exploring? That night, Fernando made lists. Pages of names crossed out, circled, crossed out again. Nothing felt right until, staring at a collection of costume jewelry borrowed from the theater's prop department, his eyes landed on a vintage opal brooch. Opal. The name settled over him like a comfortable blanket, familiar yet new. Opal, he whispered to his reflection, testing how it felt on his lips. 6 months after Halloween, Rachel helped Opal shop for her first proper bra. The department store fitting room attendant was kind, professional, and didn't ask questions when Rachel explained they needed help finding the right size for her friend who's just starting out. How does it feel? Rachel asked when Opal emerged from behind the curtain, standing straighter in a simple black bra that created the right silhouette beneath her clothes. Like I can breathe properly for the first time, Opal answered, surprised by the truth in her words. Summer arrived with warmer weather and new challenges. Opal had mastered makeup, grown more confident in feminine clothing, and even begun voice training with help from a speech therapist friend of Monica's. But public spaces remained daunting. The university administration office had a strict dress code, and though Opal had subtly feminized her work wardrobe, softer colors, more fitted shirts, she still presented as male at work. You should come to my cousin's wedding with me, Rachel suggested over coffee one Saturday. It's next month. Super chill backyard thing. No one would know you there. Opal nearly choked on her latte. A wedding? With strangers? Perfect practice, right? Low stakes. Open bar if it gets awkward. Fear and longing battled briefly before Opal nodded. What does one wear to a super chill backyard wedding? Rachel grinned. I know just the thing. The lavender blouse was simple but elegant, with subtle ruching that flattered Opal's figure. Paired with a white A-line skirt that hit just below the knee and comfortable ballet flats, the outfit made Opal feel sophisticated, yet approachable. Her brown hair, now skimming her shoulders, was styled in soft waves that framed her face. In the car outside the venue, Opal's hands trembled slightly as she applied a final touch of lip gloss. What if they know? What if someone says something? Rachel squeezed her hand. Then we leave. But they won't. You look beautiful, Opal. You look like you. The afternoon passed in a blur of introductions, champagne toasts, and cake. No one questioned Opal's presence. No one stared or whispered. She was simply Rachel's friend, another guest celebrating love on a perfect summer day. When an elderly aunt asked how they knew each other, Opal answered truthfully, "We work at the theater together." "How lovely," the woman had replied. "My husband and I met in community theater 60 years ago." That night, lying in bed, Opal replayed every conversation, every interaction. Not once had she felt out of place. Not once had she felt like she was pretending. For hours, for an entire afternoon, she had simply been herself. The next morning, Opal sat at her kitchen table and wrote an email to her supervisor at the university requesting a meeting to discuss personal matters. The reply came within hours. Monday, 9 a.m. The weekend stretched endlessly. Opal practiced what she would say, rehearsing in front of her mirror like preparing for a role. But this wasn't a performance. This was real life. Her life. Monday arrived with a clarity Opal hadn't expected. The lavender blouse and white skirt from the wedding hung ready on her closet door. A statement. A declaration. She dressed carefully, applied her makeup with precision, and arrived at her supervisor's office exactly at 9. Dr. Harriman looked up from her computer, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar woman in her doorway. Then, recognition dawned in her eyes. "Fernando?" she asked, then quickly corrected herself. "I'm sorry, that may not be correct." "Opal," came the reply, voice steady despite the racing heart beneath the lavender blouse. "My name is Opal." Dr. Harriman gestured to the chair opposite her desk. "Please, sit down. Tell me how I can help." The conversation that followed was both easier and harder than Opal had imagined. Dr. Harriman listened, asked thoughtful questions, and explained university policies on gender identity and expression. By the meeting's end, a plan was in place. A gradual transition at work, updated email signatures and directory listings, and a scheduled announcement to the department. "Thank you," Opal said as she rose to leave. "I wasn't sure." "The university is committed to supporting all our employees," Dr. Harriman said, then added more personally. "And that outfit is quite becoming." "Lavender suits you." The lavender blouse and white skirt became Opal's signature look for important days. Her first full day presenting as female at work, her first department meeting as Opal, and eventually, the day she decided to visit her parents. The drive to her childhood home felt longer than usual. Opal had spoken to her mother weekly since moving out for college a decade ago, but their conversations had grown strained over the past months as Opal evaded questions about dating and deflected invitations to family gatherings. Her parents' driveway looked the same as always. Dad's truck, Mom's garden gnomes, the basketball hoop that had lost its net years ago but never been replaced. Opal sat in her car, engine off, gathering courage. The lavender blouse felt like armor. The front door opened before she could knock. Her mother stood frozen in the doorway, taking in the sight of her child transformed. "Mom," Opal said simply. "You look like your grandmother," her mother replied unexpectedly, eyes wide. "When she was young, something about your eyes." Not rejection, not immediately, at least. Opal exhaled shakily. "Can I come in? I need to talk to you and Dad." The kitchen table had hosted countless family discussions over the years. School troubles, career choices, financial worries. Now it witnessed perhaps the most important conversation of Opal's life. Her father said little at first, hands wrapped around his coffee mug, as if anchoring himself to something solid while the world shifted around him. "Are you sure?" he finally asked. "This isn't just..." theater stuff? I'm sure, Dad. I've never been more certain of anything. Her mother reached across the table, hesitating before covering Opal's hand with her own. Will you still come for Sunday dinners? The question, so mundane amid such profound change, brought unexpected tears to Opal's eyes. Yes, of course. Good. Her mother nodded firmly. Your aunt is visiting next month. She'll want to see you. And with that simple statement, the expectation of Opal's continued presence at family functions, the acknowledgement that she remained their child despite everything changing, something eased in her chest. The skirt is nice, her mother added, ever practical. Doesn't wrinkle easily. 1 year after the Halloween dare that had started everything, Opal stood backstage at the theater, now working as assistant costume designer alongside Rachel. Her brown hair had grown past her shoulders, often pulled back in a practical ponytail for work. The administration job had been traded for full-time theater work, less pay, but infinitely more satisfaction. Can you help with this zipper? Monica called from the dressing room. I'm stuck and we're on in 20! Opal hurried over, deftly fixing the costume issue with practiced hands. All around, actors rushed through final preparations, a controlled chaos she knew intimately from both sides now. You're a lifesaver, Monica gasped, rushing off to makeup. Rachel appeared at Opal's side, clipboard in hand. Everything under control? As much as it ever is on opening night. Rachel smiled, nudging Opal's shoulder. Remember last year, when you couldn't walk in heels without holding onto the wall? Please. Opal rolled her eyes. I've blocked those traumatic memories. Liar. You've still got those silver stilettos in your closet. I saw them when I helped you move. Opal couldn't deny it. The shoes remained. A reminder, a souvenir of the moment everything changed. The theater director's voice came through their headsets. Places in 5, people! As the backstage scramble intensified, Opal caught her reflection in a dressing room mirror. Lavender blouse, her third, the others worn thin from frequent use, white skirt, brown hair tucked behind ears, face composed and confident. No mask, no costume, just Opal. You good? Rachel asked, noticing her momentary stillness. Opal nodded, smiling at her friend, who had walked this entire journey alongside her. I'm perfect. Let's do this. The stage lights dimmed, the audience hushed, and another show began. But Opal's most important performance had ended months ago. Now, she simply lived. Fall arrived again, leaves turning brilliant colors outside Opal's new apartment window. The space was smaller than her previous place, but closer to the theater and filled with carefully chosen items that reflected her true self. Photographs lined the walls. Opal with Rachel at the summer theater festival, Opal with her parents at her birthday dinner, Opal with the cast and crew of the season's most successful production. On this particular evening, Opal sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by photo albums borrowed from her parents' house. Childhood images spread before her, baseball uniforms, school pictures, awkward teenage years, a life lived in disguise without even realizing it. Her phone chimed with a text from Monica. Halloween party planning meeting tomorrow. Costume ideas? Opal smiled, thinking of purple sequins and silver stilettos, of dares and transformations. This year, she didn't need a costume to become someone else. This year, she could simply be. Something comfortable. She typed back. Maybe a witch. Classic, but practical. Another text arrived, this time from her mother. Found your grandmother's opal earrings. Thought you might like to have them. Sunday dinner? I'll be there, Opal replied, adding a heart emoji. Bringing apple pie. The woman in the mirror the next morning wore a cream sweater and jeans, brown hair pulled into a casual bun. Her makeup was minimal but skillful, a daily ritual that had evolved from desperate practice to comfortable habit. The face looking back was her own, finally and completely. At work, Opal reviewed design sketches for the winter production, making notes about fabric requirements and budget constraints. The theater had become more than employment. It had become home, a place where transformation was celebrated, where becoming someone else revealed truths rather than concealed them. Earth to Opal. Rachel waved a hand in front of her face. Where'd you go? I've been talking about lace overlays for 5 minutes. Sorry, Opal blinked. Just thinking. Dangerous hobby, Rachel teased. Anyway, as I was saying before you mentally abandoned me. The conversation shifted back to work, to the practical details of creating stage magic. But throughout the day, Opal found herself reflecting on the journey of the past year. The fear that had once seemed insurmountable now appeared distant, like looking at another person's life. That evening, after dinner with friends from the theater company, Opal walked home through the crisp autumn air. Her apartment welcomed her with familiar comfort. Plants on the windowsill, books stacked on side tables, a throw blanket crocheted by her grandmother draped over the couch. From a shelf near the door, a small purple sequin caught the light, a single piece salvaged from that transformative Halloween costume, now preserved in a tiny glass frame. A reminder not of becoming someone new, but of discovering who had been there all along. Opal touched the frame lightly, then moved through her evening routine with peaceful familiarity. Tomorrow would bring Sunday dinner with her parents, who now proudly introduced her as our daughter, Opal. Next week would bring Halloween and new memories to create. The months ahead held challenges, certainly, but also promise. The lavender blouse hung in her closet alongside other clothes that now simply felt like her own, not costumes or disguises. The white A-line skirt, slightly worn at the hem from frequent wear, remained a favorite for important occasions. These weren't statements anymore. They were simply clothes that made her feel comfortable, beautiful, and herself. As she prepared for bed, Opal caught sight of her reflection once more. No traces remained of the person who had once stood trembling in borrowed finery, uncertain and afraid. The woman who gazed back now stood straight, eyes clear and confident. Not a role to play, not a dare to complete, but a life to live, honestly, openly, and with joy. The theater had taught Opal many things over the years. How to move props efficiently, how to adjust lighting for different effects, how costumes could transform performers. But its greatest lesson had been unexpected. Sometimes the most authentic performance is no performance at all. Sometimes the most courageous act is simply being who you are. In her dreams that night, there were no silver stilettos or purple sequins, no applause or stage lights, just Opal, walking forward in comfortable shoes, brown hair catching the sunlight, finally at home in her own skin. Sunday morning brought gentle rain against the windows and the comfortable ritual of preparing for family dinner. Opal chose a soft gray sweater dress for the occasion, practical for the weather, yet elegant enough to honor the special gift her mother had mentioned. The opal earrings would be precious not just for their beauty, but for the acceptance they represented. As she arranged sliced apples in a pie crust, adding cinnamon and sugar with a generous hand, Opal hummed along to music playing from her kitchen speaker. The simple domestic task brought unexpected contentment, connecting her to family traditions while creating new ones of her own. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Road work on usual route. Take Highway 16 instead." Such an ordinary message, yet extraordinary in its normalcy. Her father, who had struggled most with pronouns in the beginning, now simply communicated as he always had, with practical concern for his daughter's journey home. No qualifiers, no awkwardness, just family. The pie went into the oven, filling the apartment with sweet aromas. While it baked, Opal wrote in her journal, a practice recommended by her therapist and now a cherished part of her routine. Today's entry acknowledged the anniversary approaching, 1 year since the Halloween dare that had changed everything. "Looking back," she wrote, "I wonder if I should thank them for the dare, or if this was always inevitable, if I would have found my way here eventually through some other catalyst. Either way, I'm grateful for where I am, for who I am, and for those who've walked this path with me." The timer chimed. The pie emerged golden and fragrant. Within an hour, Opal was driving toward her childhood home, windshield wipers marking a gentle rhythm against the persistent drizzle. The countryside passed in familiar sequence. The red barn with its faded advertisement, the stone church with its crooked steeple, the field where sunflowers had bloomed in summer, now turned to autumn stubble. Her mother opened the door before Opal could knock, enfolding her in a tight embrace that smelled of roast chicken and her signature perfume. "You're just in time," she said, taking the pie. "Your father's about to carve the chicken, and your uncle just called. He's joining us too." A moment of apprehension flickered through Opal. Uncle Robert hadn't seen her since the transition. Unlike her parents, who had witnessed gradual changes, her father's brother would be seeing Opal for the first time. Her mother seemed to read her thoughts. "Don't worry about Robert. I sent him that lovely photo from the theater gala. He knows, and he's fine. Says he's looking forward to seeing you." The dining room looked as it always had. The same china cabinet, the same landscape paintings, the same table now set with the good dishes reserved for special occasions. Her father stood carving the chicken, glancing up with a warm smile. "There she is," he said simply. "Hungry?" Before Opal could answer, the doorbell rang. Her mother hurried to answer it, returning moments later with Uncle Robert, his coat dampened by rain. A brief silence fell as he looked at Opal, his expression unreadable. Then his face broke into the familiar smile she remembered from childhood birthdays and holiday gatherings.
"Well,"
he said, hanging his wet coat by the door.
"You look exactly like my mother when she was young. Same eyes."
He turned to Opal's father.
"Remember those old photos, Tom? Spitting image."
Just like that, the moment passed. Dinner proceeded with the comfortable rhythm of family gatherings, passing dishes, sharing news, gentle teasing about past mishaps. Uncle Robert asked about the theater, about Opal's work designing costumes, about her apartment. Normal questions, normal conversation. After the meal, while Uncle Robert and her father discussed football in the living room, Opal helped her mother clear the table. In the kitchen, away from the men, her mother opened a small velvet box. "These were her wedding earrings," she explained, revealing delicate opal studs set in vintage silver. "Your grandmother would have wanted you to have them." Opal touched the earrings gently, their iridescent surfaces catching the kitchen light. "They're beautiful." "Here," her mother said, taking the earrings from the box. "Let me." With tender care, she helped Opal remove the simple pearl studs she wore and replace them with the family heirlooms. The moment felt ceremonial somehow, a blessing of sorts.
"Perfect,"
her mother pronounced, stepping back to admire the effect. Then, with characteristic practicality, she added, "You'll want to get those posts checked by a jeweler. They're old, and silver bends easily." Opal laughed, embracing her mother again. "I will, I promise." Later, saying goodbye on the porch steps, Uncle Robert surprised her with a warm hug. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said quietly. "She never did care much for convention." The drive home through darkness and lingering rain felt easier somehow, as if another weight had been lifted. The opal earrings caught occasional glints from passing headlights, a tangible connection to family history, to women she had never known, but whose blood ran in her veins, whose eyes, apparently, she shared. Back in her apartment, Opal carefully removed the precious earrings and placed them in the velvet box on her dresser. The day had been perfect in its ordinariness. A family dinner, conversation, shared memories. No grand declarations, no dramatic moments. Just belonging. As she prepared for bed, a text from Rachel appeared. "Costume committee meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't forget your sketches for Act 2. The theater world continued its familiar cycle. Planning, creating, performing, always looking ahead to the next production. Opal set her alarm, knowing tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. The lavender blouse hung ready for morning, now just one of many in her wardrobe, no longer a symbol, but simply a favorite. 1 year ago, a dare had set her on this path. 1 year later, Opal no longer needed courage to live as herself. The silver stilettos remained in her closet, a memento rather than a necessity. The journey that had begun in fear now continued in confidence, not without challenges, but with authenticity and hope. In her mirror, brown hair framed a face that finally felt like home. Eyes that had once held uncertainty now reflected peace. The woman who gazed back was neither performance nor pretense, but simply Opal. Daughter, friend, artist, and most importantly, herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!